So this video is an informational video on imprinting and how it affects relationships. I think most people are generally familiar with the process of imprinting. It's when a brain gets information about what the world is and how to navigate through it. In chickens, the most common example is when the chicken comes out of the egg, the first moving thing it sees is mom, and that's what the chicken thinks it's going to be. And if the chicken happens to see a dog, then you get a chicken that tries to bark instead of peep, or tries to hike its leg. You get a pretty screwed up little chicken. My absolute most favorite experiment of all times actually is about imprinting, and it involves having raised kittens in an environment where all the kittens saw were horizontal stripes for the first 6 weeks of their lives. When they put the kittens out in the real world, the kittens ran into table legs and chair legs because as far as their brains were concerned, vertical didn't exist. They could not see those legs. They only saw horizontal. And it turns out that the imprinting time of human beings appears to be from in utero till about 7 years old. And after that, tick-tock, the game is locked unless there are a couple of extenuating circumstances that open up that critical period. What the messages that you get when you're imprinted are who you are, who you're not. Are you a winner? Are you a loser? Are you basically a good person? Are you kind? Are you selfish? It's also a blueprint or a map of the world. What is God, love, sex, money, life, and your role in relationship to all of those things? One of the most interesting features about imprints is that they eventually become your self-fulfilling prophecy, because you are those things that you are told that you are, and sometimes you can't see the other things, both challenging and also really good things that are vertical, that you just didn't realize you are authentically before you're taught who you're not. Those 5 conditions that open up the critical window of learning include a near-death experience. Think about Scrooge. You know, he thinks he's dying one night, and the next day he gets in touch with his generous self. Falling in love also opens up that critical window, and I think it's interesting that falling in love is somehow related to near-death experience. Spiritual conversion can also open a person up to a different way of seeing themselves in life. So can a good therapist, and interestingly also psychedelics. Those periods of time give you a chance to consciously choose what it is that you want to be, rather than potentially self-sabotaging beliefs about things that don't work for you anymore. I often tell people that things that help you to survive as a child can become a handicap for you as an adult. So, for instance, if you are taught that children are supposed to be seen, not heard, that can work well, especially if you have, say, a violent parent on the scene, and being invisible, it protects you. But when you become an adult, being invisible can often keep you from asking for what you want and being seen by an employer who could give you a raise or a promotion. So we all have opportunities to go back and consciously change the imprints, which typically are unconscious and can only be seen by the reflection of how our life goes. You can tell an imprint is at play when people say things like, I am. That would be like, I am the kind of person that always does this. I'm not that kind of person. Or things like, that kind of thing doesn't surprise me. This is my kind of luck. This isn't my kind of luck. There's always an I am somehow attached to it, and a theme that stays the same throughout life, and only the names change. But it is possible, like I said, to reprogram those imprints. Now, it's also fascinating to note that when you change imprints, it can feel scary at first. For instance, if I were to suggest that you change an imprint like look both ways before you cross the street, your initial response, and rightfully so, might be, I don't think I want to do that one because that one's helped me to get here. And you would be right. I would not recommend changing that imprint. However, changing an imprint like it's not okay to ask for what you want would probably be a really good one for you to be able to ask for what you want as an adult. But I tell you right now, at least in the very beginning of learning how to change the imprints, it feels as scary to your childlike self as saying, I'm going to change it to look both ways before I cross the street. The good news is that when you change an imprint, when you reprogram, you will see a reflection, a change in your life almost immediately, because the part of the brain where imprinting occurs, the limbic system, does not understand the difference between past, present, and future. So if you give your childlike self the new information in the past, you experience a different present, and therefore the trajectory of the way that your life unfolds in that particular process changes immediately. It feels like magic to me to see it happen. And one of the things that we'll be going through in the couples retreat is actually an exercise into of reprogramming your imprint so that you can have a more liberated life, and also paying attention to and identifying what are some of the couple imprints that are clashing. So one of the toughest imprints that I see happen in couples is that couples can do just fine as friends, then they end up being boyfriend and girlfriend, they're having a great time with that, they can become lovers, and then many times when they decide, this is really good stuff, let's cement it in, let's get married. When they get married, they notice that something changes, and it's not always pleasant, and they can't quite identify it, and then they end up having some conflict and struggles about things that seem to continually circulate, a common theme that is annoying and doesn't seem to be able to be resolved. And most of the time, that's related to not the people not caring about each other. It's not related to the love. It's related to the imprints unconsciously at work. So, for instance, say a young boy grows up with a father who's a bit of an authoritarian figure. And when the little boy asks the father questions about the way something is done or the way something isn't done, and the father takes that as questioning his authority, then he sees it as disrespectful. That little boy learns asking questions about a decision is not respecting. Well, let's take the case of a young girl whose parents teach her authority figures are created to help protect her and to help her to be healthy and happy. And so when she goes to a doctor's visit, let's say the mom asks the little girl, or do you have any questions for your doctor? Do you understand why you're getting this treatment, etc.? And the little girl is empowered to ask questions and to feel like she's an active and vital part of a relationship. Well, fast forward to when these two people get together and they get married, and their mother and their father and their husband and their wife imprints kick in. They can end up falling into roles of those imprints. And then when the woman asks a question of the husband, his imprint can get set off that she's not being respectful and be very confusing to the woman, because all she's doing is trying to be an engaged and supportive partner. So that's just one example of how imprints can clash. My experience has been that couples typically have 3 to 5 common themes that recirculate in a relationship, and only the times and sometimes the names change. But if you can identify those and rework them, well, then you get better problems. You get finer challenges that are actually more fun and satisfying to work on than the more low-level unconscious processes that keep you from being a really healthy, happy couple. And when you take care of some of those basic imprints, then you have a lot more energy for co-creating and co-manifesting your dreams, your partner's dreams, your couple's dreams, and your family dreams. And actually, many times can contribute to making the world a better place. So, fasten your seatbelt.